I'm speaking on the defense against the dark arts this morning, especially the dark art of causing fear. So I'm going to talk about fear. I posted on my Facebook page that I was preaching about fear, and about 80 people wrote what they thought about fear. It's a topic people have been thinking about, or people think about often. I remember my first brush with real fear was when I was in second grade during the Cuban Missile Crisis. People who are younger than I have memories of the Twin Towers that are similar. I remember a teacher saying to us that if the Russians bombed us with nuclear weapons, what we should do is get under our desks, crouch down and put our hands over our heads like this. And I spent the next months terrified. Every time I heard a plane fly overhead, I expected the bombs to drop. And I pictured running up and down the street looking for my mom and trying to figure out where my sister was, and seeing everything that I knew that was familiar about Statesville, North Carolina, all burnt to a cinder. I'm mad about it because I think that is a useless fear. It would not have done me any good to be under the desk, and yet it stole many, many nights of peace from a little kid for no reason. Little kids now can be scared of any number of things, and you'd be surprised what they hear and what they imagine. Terrorists, tornadoes, hurricanes. Some of them list in the top 5 terrors getting fat. I didn't know that. I'm here to tell you it's really not that bad. I was scared of bees when I was a kid, terrified. And I remember almost jumping out of my mother's Rambler station wagon at 60 miles an hour because there was a bee on the window by my head. I think hitting the pavement would have been worse than getting stung. I was scared of spiders too. Like I told the kids, I used to wake up and dream that a spider was under my pillow, and I would make my mother take the bed apart. She was very patient. And did not cuss at all when she had to take the bed apart in the middle of the night and say, "See, no spiders." Fear can serve a purpose. It starts us being cautious. We can be cautious. We can be careful because of fear. We can keep deadlines because of fear. We can discipline our behavior because of fear. But I think you can just have caution without fear. You can go straight to being careful without being scared. Fear can serve a purpose, but a lot of times it gets stuck. And so it keeps kind of pumping stress chemicals into your bloodstream and shortening your life by getting stuck in your mind and in your muscles more than it needs to. And so it is because of that, I think that Frank Herbert says fear is the mind killer. You don't think well when you're scared. That's why I like to say I'm smart and I'm brave and I'm not alone, because that reminds you of reality. You can't do anything about your fear by being scared. As our president long ago said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, because it makes you dumb. And it takes away your agency. Does that make sense? So fear should be noticed, but it should also be defended against, because it is a mind killer. Some people like to be scared, but they like to be scared in a kind of a controlled atmosphere. Roller coaster, House of Horrors, horror movies. That you can kind of dial it up or down to your taste, and if you get too scared, you can just get up and leave the theater, which I have done, and I won't tell you about the movies that I've done it in. Mostly movies with monkeys in them, because I'm scared of monkeys. I don't know why. Whenever I go to a therapist, I have other stuff to talk about, so I've never really dealt with that. Many people are scared because of the news and because of the shows on television. I went around door to door in my very suburban neighborhood in South Carolina, being the block captain, collecting neighborhood dues. And the people who were almost all white opened the door like this, a little crack, to see a tall, white, not dangerous looking woman standing there, but they were scared. Why? My black neighbors opened the door like that too. I think they had a little more reason to be scared. But everybody acted like they were these roving gangs of middle-aged white ladies knocking on doors. I don't know what I was going to do to them, but they were scared. And I think it's because of the news. I majored in political science at Duke, and I had a concentration in the media, and I learned that the journalists always say, if it bleeds, it leads. And so you put the bloodiest stories, the most awful things on the front page or on your website because people click more on the terrible stuff than they do on, they say, why don't people report good news? Well, easy, because people don't want to read good news. They like to read terrible news, and the worse, the better. And I guess that's just human nature, and we've probably always been like that. So I wouldn't say we blame the media, because this is what we want to watch, apparently. Another thing that we need to be aware of in our defense against the dark arts is that the television shows scare us in particular ways. They scare us by showing men pursuing scared, beautiful young women, who apparently we love to watch beautiful young women scream. Because if you have a TV show where a guy is stalking middle-aged men, it would just not be that entertaining. I'm sorry, men, I don't know what the deal is. And if you had some nutty guy stalking dogs, everybody would be up in arms. They'd be like, that guy, he's stalking the dog with a knife. That's terrible. But if it's a young woman, everybody's like, oh yeah, don't change the channel, let's watch this. People love terrible stories about a place where they are not. So, like in the South, they show terrible stories about the cities in the Northeast, terrible things that happen in apartment complexes in Brooklyn, terrible. And then in the Northeast, where we've also lived, they show terrible stories about things that happen in the South. Oh my God, South Carolina, you wouldn't want to live there. Look what they do. Burning crosses and everything. So it's kind of weird, but we like to see terrible things about states where we're not. Mostly we like to see terrible things about Kentucky. I don't know why. Our culture's fears and our culture's dream of what is entertaining has consequences. Mostly the stock character in the scary stories on the news is the black man. This has consequences. We see the perp walk, we see the guy who's handcuffed and he's walked in front of the police station and the cameras are on him. Do we ever see the Wall Street guys handcuffed and perp walked down to the station? No, not usually. Do we ever see a guy in a button-down shirt trying to climb a chain link fence with the police after him? No, although that would be very entertaining. But we don't see the bankers running. We don't see them prosecuted. We see the black man as a dangerous character. And it hasn't been until pretty recently, Grey's Anatomy and such, that we see the black man on television and he's a heart surgeon. Usually, he's a drug dealer. We have to ask ourselves, what dark art is it that is presenting this character to us as such a stock character? Because it's not entertaining, it leads to the death of black men by police. Here in Austin, you get shot every now and then if you're a black man. In New York City, you get stopped and frisked even if you're sitting in a black police SUV and you happen to be an African American police chief, you get rousted. This happened last week. If you're Trayvon Martin, it leads to your death. And I could go on with the names and that list. The scary, threatening black male as automatic suspect. And we who have black men in our families, black sons in our families, have to teach them not to take a run at night, even if you're on the track team, not to look scary. If a police officer stops you, you have to put your hands in sight and not move and not mouth off. Our white sons, we don't have to be so careful with. This is a direct consequence of the scary stories that our culture tells. So we have to defend against these dark arts and notice, just start to notice. Another scary character is the government. There's a woman I know who thinks the government has machines that give out waves and that they put them at places where a lot of liberals are gathered, like rock concerts. And she said they beam these waves into you. And I said, why? And she said, well, because they want to change the frequency at which you vibrate. And I'm like, what? She said, I probably should have walked away, but I kept asking questions. She said, if you change their vibration, they'll be easier to control. You make them scared, and they're easier to control. And the government's doing this? I said, yes. I'm like, I've worked for the government before. And I have to say, they're really not that organized. I would love to believe they're pulling off a conspiracy, but I really just don't think they're that organized. I mean, I sent a bunch of papers to the copier, which was in a different building, and a courier had to come and get the stack of papers. And then what happened was 5 hours later, while I was waiting for my copies, the courier came back with my stack of papers and said, you have to take that paperclip out of the middle, they won't copy it. And then he left. And so I had to take the paperclip out and call another courier. Are you telling me those people could create wave machines? People do make money on our fears. They make money on our fears of having our house broken into. They make money on our fears of terrorism. They make money on our fears of identity theft. And all of these things do happen. We just have to learn what our odds are. So, Merlin, in Once and Future King, talks about learning. He said, the best thing for being sad, and I think also being afraid, replied Merlin, beginning to puff and blow, is to learn something. That's the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling in your anatomies. You may lie awake at night listening to the disorder of your veins. You may miss your only love. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There's only one thing for it then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the only thing for you. Look what a lot of things there are to learn. So when you're scared of something, just learn about it and it will help. Many people are afraid of terrorists in our country. And we should definitely defend ourselves against terrorism. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But when you learn a little about it, you find out that you are 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than by a terrorist. You are 8 times more likely to die from accidental electrocution than from a terrorist attack. You are 6 times more likely to die from hot weather than from a terrorist attack. And this is my favorite. Number of people killed this year from terrorist attacks, 3. Number of people killed by toddlers, 5. See, we're not scared enough of the toddlers. To give you all the information, these were toddlers with guns. We're scared of our children being gunned down at school, and horribly it happens. But 5 children a day are lost from abuse-related injuries that happened at home with the doors locked and no strangers around. We're scared to walk at night in our neighborhoods, scared to hike in the woods alone. We're scared to die by the hand of someone breaking in and murdering us, but we are infinitely more likely to die at the hand of someone we know or someone to whom we are related. We're scared to be killed by ricin or anthrax, but we're infinitely more likely to die in the car or to die from eating too much fat or sitting on the couch resolving to exercise but not really exercising. So I think we're scared of all the wrong things. We lock our car doors and take our kids home to where the guns are. We tell them all about being wary of strangers, and we forget to tell them about protecting themselves from uncles and cousins. We don't let our neighbors into our lives and shut ourselves off so there's no one to turn to when we're in trouble. We're scared of people who are different from us, and we don't want to know them, and we worry that they may rob us or attack us. But we also worry about hurting their feelings when we lunge to shut the car door lock as they walk by. Isolation is greatly to be feared, but our fears keep us alone. Ignorance is greatly to be feared, but our fears keep us at home, associating only with folks of our same nationality, class, and color. Rigidity is greatly to be feared, but our fears keep us from bending, growing, changing in a supple way. Missing life is greatly to be feared, but our fears lock us down into a narrowness of experience that sucks the marrow from our bones and leaves us dried up husks in our nice brick homes with our satisfactory retirement funds. Looking like a fool is greatly to be feared, but our fears make us keep silent when we should speak and talk too much when we should be quiet. Here are the defenses against the dark arts. If you find yourself afraid of something, check it out. Get to know it better. Get to know yourself and don't ignore the violence inside your own heart or inside your own home. Take the anti-racism course here in the fall, even if you don't think you need it. Become more culturally competent. That will keep you from looking and feeling like a fool when you say and do the wrong thing, although we still will, because that's how we are. Encourage people not to be afraid. Even being afraid of cancer, the studies show, makes you less likely to go get treatment because you're too scared. And most people greatly overestimate their odds of getting it, although many of our beloved ones do get it. Do a small thing to make things better. Notice your fears, but refuse to stay afraid. I'm going to end with a poem that I love from a friend of mine named Marcia Truman Cooper. This is her best-known poem. It's called Fearing Paris. Suppose that what you fear could be trapped and held in Paris. Then you'd have the courage to go everywhere in the world, all the directions of the compass open to you, except the degrees east or west of true north that lead to Paris. Still, you wouldn't dare put your toes smack dab on the city limit line. You're not really willing to stand up on a mountainside miles away and watch the Paris lights come up at night. Just to be on the safe side, you decide to stay completely out of France. But then the danger seems too close, even to those boundaries, and you feel the timid part of you covering the whole globe again. You need the kind of friend who learns your secret and says, "See Paris first."